Bo Deely, and welcome to Something Edible.
I reckon that you can safely divide people into two separate camps. You got the ones that grew up eating pancakes from scratch, and you got the ones that grew up eating pancakes from a mix. It's just a darn shame that you have that second group of people, because pancakes are so easy to make. There's really no reason to even buy a mix. Well, today I'm gonna bring those mixed people over to the scratch side of the tracks here, because I've got a whole grain, whole wheat pancake recipe that's so stinking easy to make that you'll be making it for every weekend breakfast, and heck, even as a weeknight meal. So we're gonna make a honey and whole wheat pancake today. Let's get busy. All right, to begin with, we're dealing with two separate groups of ingredients. We've got dry ingredients and we've got wet ingredients. We're going to stage our dry ingredients first, then go to our wet ingredients after that. For our dry ingredients right in here, I have a cup each of all-purpose flour and a cup of whole white wheat flour. You could probably use just plain old whole wheat flour, but the whole white wheat I like better. It bakes nicer, and it makes pancakes nicer too. So to those two flours, we are going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a teaspoon of baking soda. And that's it for the dry ingredients. We're just going to make sure that all that leavening gets mixed together and integrated throughout the flour. So really, get back in there. There we go. So that's it for the dry ingredients. So we're going to set those aside, and we're going to get our wet stuff together. For the wet side of things, we're going to start out with 2 tablespoons of melted butter. And you see I got a separate container here for my wet stuff that we want to mix everything into. Keep it separate from our dry stuff for now. You'll be glad you did. And then we're also going to add 2 tablespoons of honey to that. We're going to whisk that together just to make sure that it's mixed. If your butter's melted and hot, this goes together easier. There we go. And now to that, we're going to add 2 eggs. If your eggs are room temperature, you're going to have a much easier time with things. The pancakes come out a lot better. If you've ever complained about pancakes not being light and fluffy, could be part of the reason. The eggs just do their thing better when they're room temperature. Okay, and so then I'm going to beat those eggs slightly to make sure that they're kind of homogenized before we dump them in to our sugar and our fat. That's good enough. So we're going to add our 2 eggs into our sugar and fat. And we're also going to add a teaspoon of salt to that. I know that seems like a ridiculous amount of salt, but the whole wheat in there, to really get those weedy, nutty flavors, you need some salt moving things around. So, gotta have it. And you notice my salt is on the wet team, not the dry team. I like to make sure my salt's dissolved so that you don't get a whole big bite of salt in there. We're making pancakes, not homemade ice cream, for crying out loud. Okay, so that's together now, and we're going to add to that 8 ounces or a cup of buttermilk. You could use more milk for this too, I guess. The texture is going to be a little bit different. You could even you'd probably use yogurt too, I suppose, but you know, buttermilk's cheap, it's easy to get a hold of, just use buttermilk. Okay, and now we're going to add to that, we're going to add a half cup of just plain old milk. Buttermilk can get things too thick, and it helps to have that little bit of plain old dairy to loosen things up. So now that we've got our wet ingredients mixed together, we're going to add those to the dry ingredients and make some pancakes, but not before we preheat our griddle. You have to do that first. So we'll leave these separate for now, and then when we're ready to make pancakes, we'll bring them together. So let's heat the griddle first. All right, I got my handy dandy non-stick electric griddle out. You know, I love cast iron, but not this time. I mean, this is pancakes here. So I'm adding just a little bit of cooking spray to that, and then I'm going to take a paper towel. I'm going to spread it around and wipe it right back off. You ever notice how some people will tell you that pancakes always, the first pancakes on the griddle never look as good? Well, it's because you've added too much fat to them, and you're essentially deep fat frying the outside of your pancake. But you need a little bit of grease in order to prime that nonstick surface, or any surface for that matter, even if you're using cast iron. So that's enough, and that's going to guarantee that your first pancakes turn out as good as your second and your third, and everything down the road till you're out of pancakes. So this is prepped, this is preheating to 375, and now we're going to bring our wet and dry ingredients together. Okay, everything in our dry team is ready to accept everything on the wet side of things. You always want to go wet into dry. You do it the other way and you're just going to coat all of your dry stuff and make big, lumpy, glumpy, nasty mess. So wet into dry here. And I'm going to switch hands because my left hand wants to whisk. So I'm just going to put this in here. It's not really a whisk as much as it's a stir. The whisk just works well to get everything mixed. And you don't want to overmix this either. That's the thing. I mean, you want to build a little bit of gluten, but not much. And I'll probably switch over to a different mixing utensil here in a second. Now that's getting really thick, and that's okay. Don't sweat it. So in with the spatula, we're going to get in there and just get those lumps off the bottom. So you still got a lot of dry in there. You just want to make sure that you don't want to overmix, but you want to make sure that's all taken care of all the same. Now this looks, like I said, pretty thick, but that's okay. You got gluten starting to form in there, and you've also got starch that's being covered by liquid and hydrated. So it's going to get thick, and that's why we saved back just a little bit of milk. And so before we get going on the griddle, we're going to add this milk to it, give it a good stir, and then put our pancakes on the griddle. Griddle is set to 375. Wet and dry are together. We're getting a little thick here. That's okay, because we saved back our 2 ounces or a quarter cup of milk. So I'm just going to add, I like to add about half of that first to see where I'm at. You know, everybody measures flour differently, so it's just a good idea to ease yourself into this. Try not to overmix. You just want to get it integrated. And I'm still a little thick. I'm going to go ahead and add my last ounce. If it's not quite where you want it to be at this point, add milk by the tablespoon until you're happy with what you got. What you don't want to do is over add here, because then you over add liquid, you over mix, and you end up with tough pancakes. And nobody likes tough pancakes. Another 3 here. I don't like to crowd my griddle. I think yeah, there's really no need to crowd your griddle, because you can keep your pancakes as you finish them in a warm oven. I got a warming drawer on mine that you can actually keep it on, but even the oven on its lowest setting, put the pancakes in there, and then the person cooking the pancakes can eat at the same time as everybody else does, which is kind of nice, you know. You sit down with everybody, you want to eat at the same time too. Perfect. I've got my pancakes right here. I kept a few of them in the warming drawer so that I could finish all at once, and everybody eats pancakes at once, but it's just me, so I'm going to take the last ones off the griddle. They're still hot. It's time to plate these up, and I'm going to start with a little pat of butter. There's the butter. And since these are honey and whole wheat pancakes, it's totally appropriate here to use just a little drizzle of honey. Here we go. Perfect. The nice thing about using whole wheat in this recipe is it's not the same old pancake recipe. You know, you get a little bit of a depth of flavor that you're really not expecting from normal pancakes. You still get the tanginess of the buttermilk, you get the sweetness of the honey, and the richness of the butter instead. So if you want to try your hand at from scratch pancakes and you want to try this recipe, you can log on to hdnews.net and get my honey and whole wheat pancake recipe, or you can get it from my website, somethingedible.com. And if you have questions about pancakes, you know, pancakes are kind of finicky, so if something doesn't turn out quite right, hit me up on Facebook or give me a tweet and see if I can't help you. So get out there and make some pancakes. These are good, and you don't need a mix to do it. Okay, very good. Oh, yes.